The first time we looked at this routine, our topic was the topic of assessment, if you remember. And you had a bit of a think about what assessment meant to you at that time. And what was the first thing you were asked to do? Once you'd had to think about it, what did I ask you to do, Kayla?
3 words.
3 words that instantly come into your mind when somebody says assessment. What was the next thing?
2 questions.
Correct.
And 1 analogy.
Analogy. That's correct. So could you now, by yourself, you don't need to discuss yet, could you now write 3 words that come into your mind when I say assessment? You have been doing self-assessment for the last 2 weeks. That may influence your choice of words. When you've got your 3 words, could you write them onto a sticky note and go and pop it on the paper, please? This is where the bridging part comes in. We're going to compare them with some of the words you write the first time and see if your understanding of the whole concept of assessment has changed at all. If you remember back last time, we had a lot of negative words, which is fine. That's how you were feeling about it. Mean, boring, nervous, frightening, bad, stupid, dumb, scary. We also did have some words that weren't negative. Work, information, hard, we didn't know whether that was negative or not, effort, honesty. I'm going to see now, we'll share some of the words you've got there. We have got some new words coming in. Who wrote truthful, fair and accurate? Kayla, could you explain to us why you chose those 3 words?
Because most of the time they've got to be like sort of real and fair and
So
right.
assessment needs to be fair.
Yeah, and right.
And correct, as in accurate. Claire, I'm interested in your use of the word important. Why have you chosen that word in connection with assessment?
I just thought it was like important to us, so like we know that you're assessing us right.
It's important for you to know that I'm assessing you correctly.
Yep.
Is it important for you to be able to assess yourself
Yep.
accurately? Why?
So you know like where you are, like what standard you are.
That's a nice answer. Improvements, achievements, standards. Chelsea, could you explain your words to us, please?
Improvements, so when you assess yourself you can find out where you are and where you need to improve. Achievements, so then when you find out where you have been assessed, what you have done well to be on that standard, and standards so you know where you are.
Okay, I think we do have a difference in words. Do you think so?
Yes.
When we first did this, a lot of our questions were to do with why do we do assessment? Why do we need to do it? If you remember, we had a lot of questions like that. Why do we assess people? Why are there assessments? Why do we assess people? Who thought of assessment? How does assessment help teachers?
Assessment helps teachers by if you read to them, and if you can't read properly, they can help you through the way to help you read.
So assessment helps me to know how to help you. Spot on. How many times have I said to you that I need to know if you're having difficulty with something so that I can help you improve? Millions. Yes, you've got to let me know if there's something you're having trouble with. Okay, your last task, write down your one statement about assessment, an analogy. What is it like? What is it comparable to? That's fairly brutal. That's an interesting one. Is like a river of words forming. Assessment is like a sun because it makes people happy when they get their results. Assessment is like being trapped in a dark room. Assessment is like a big yellow bus with lots of different places. What a really interesting analogy that is. We've still got a few negative vibes here about assessment. By the end of the next 2 weeks, when you've completely finished self-assessing and running your own parent-teacher interview, then we might revisit it again and see if you're still feeling quite so negative about it. I would like to become more practiced at using the routines with the kids. I'd like to start to get some feedback from the kids, on which I haven't done yet. I haven't talked to them about how are you finding these routines. I would like to get the routines in place on a whole school basis. I'd like to see them starting in kinder and going right through. So I think for myself as a grade 6 teacher, to be able to see a development of how kids use these routines and how effective they are would certainly help me understand how they're working.
Thinking routine 2. Headlines.
We have to pick just 3 or 4 words that are really going to make somebody think about what we're trying to tell them. We have to give them a clue as to what we're talking about, and then maybe they'll ask us a little bit more. This is just a quick activity to make us do a little bit of thinking. Pop your headline underneath your chin for me first so that I can have a look, and maybe the people at the front can just look back towards other people and see what they've got under their chins as well. Thinking we tend to think of is, yes, just ask a question and children give you an answer back, but being able to look at it a different way, the think one-to-one where you looked at a picture and then got them to think from there, this one with the headlines. It was just a totally different way of tackling it. Short, quick activities, but it got the children thinking. Well, we discovered you had to think to do the headline, but then somebody else had to think when they read the headline. So there were 2 different sorts of thinking happening there.
Well, we climbed Mount Wellington in the beginning of term, and when we got back, we were told to think of kind of a good heading to explain our best part of the day walk. And you can see like some pretty crazy ones there.
I like the girls to go about solving their own problems and thinking through the types of issues that they have. We also look at events that may not be specifically academically educational, such as taking them for a day walk on the mountain, but from that, we can see what they actually got out of that day by doing a routine like the headlines routine, where they come back and they think about what was the overarching thing of the day, how could they describe the day in a headline, and what they come up with is often quite sort of amazing and incredible. And that particular one was all about the group bonding that they made on that day, not necessarily about being in the bush, not being at school, but relating with others and sharing the day with their peers.
It sort of happened by accident. Not long after I came back from his original seminar, we were making pancakes for Shrove Tuesday, and the children were very busily preparing them, and we set off the fire alarm. So we got taken over to the Oval and we had to come back a fair while later, and instead of doing a procedure writing, we decided to do headlines, and it made a real impact on the children because they could make a statement with their words, not using a lot of words, but they actually managed to say quite a lot in 5 or 6 words, and that appealed to them as well, because sometimes they don't like to do a lot of writing, and that made it really easy for them to sit and make a big headline that stood out. So we had some examples such as alarming pancakes, school cooks as children walk. So they decided to put a bit of humour in it as well, which was an added dimension and meant that I got a little bit more out of what they were doing.
We use headlines quite often. I've found that particularly useful for keying into if students are having problems in the playground, for example. I ask them to do a headline after lunch, and it can give me some really good clues as to what's happening there, and I can have a conversation with them about that.